I've now been taking Hearty Nutritionals for a period of 3 to 4 years. After taking it for a period of 3 years, even looking into the 4th year, I can't imagine going back to how I was prior to taking Hearty Nutritionals. My routine commute resulted in a rear ending at 55 miles per hour. My life as I knew it was never the same, and I became a pretty much research subject of how to fix a broken brain, a broken body, a broken individual. And from there, it was like the helpless feeling of, I've got to find a way out. It was then that I went, okay, this makes sense. I mean, where can we take something that, even though I take 12 capsules a day, but it's gonna do this much for my body, you know? And what I did at that time was I ended up bookmarking it in my browser, and I kept thinking about it. And then life got in the way, and a year passed, and I happened to be searching again, more frustrated because more time had gone by. And I was like, you know, there were some things I found a year ago. Maybe I go back to that because things weren't improving for me. And it now had been like 3-4 years post-accident, and I thought, you know, I've got to go back to that research stuff. I opened up the bookmark, and then there was Hearty Nutritionals. And from there, it was very clear that, okay, now I got to push order. I need to try this, and let's give it a whirl. I would say my only regret is, had I continued reading and researching further, I would have hit send a lot sooner. You know, it was that typical interpretation we all go through. Could yet another product, could yet another web banner, could yet another article really deliver what it was saying it would? You know, for me, that interpretation fed me waiting. I waited a year. Had I hit the send button sooner and ordered the product, I would have been that much further along that much sooner. When I first started taking the product, you know, it was like, oh, okay, I'm gonna take these supplements. Within 3 days, I felt like the noise that I always hear of all these different things coming at me, my experience of my day-to-day life was just a little quieter. But even above that, I didn't feel as wound. I didn't feel as, you know, revved. I felt more calm. And not only did I have mental clarity, I had, you know, less pain. I had less agitation. I actually started sleeping. That was probably the biggest thing. You know, I would have to take a medication at night, a little bit of something to go to bed. After taking the Hearty Nutritionals for a period of 3 weeks, I started to realize, I'm like, well, I don't need that anymore. I'm getting tired on my own. So I was able to wean off the 3 different medications I had been taking. 1, to make me more alert and focused. 2 was to help me sleep a little bit better at night. And the other one was to help control the anxiety. And the anxiety is a big piece for someone that lives with a traumatic brain injury. You know, prior to the brain injury and prior to the motor vehicle accident, I would operate cool, calm as a cucumber and had more energy than I knew what to do with. I could pretty much take on, you know, the junior league, my design job, raising a child on my own, still do probably some other type of hobby in the evening and wake up the next day and go do my job, and then take my job home at night in my brain, and there may be some things I needed to resolve at night that the next day I needed for work, and my brain would go to work at night solving these things, and I'd wake up the next morning and be ready to do my job on top of the 4 other things I was going to juggle. After the brain injury, everything went quiet, and there was a lot of cognitive fog, a lot of difficulty concentrating, easily distracted. Just, you know, it's probably your worst nightmare come true that you read and see everywhere, but I was like experiencing it, and people would look at me and go, oh, like, great to see you, where you've been? And I'd be like, I really haven't been anywhere, I'm still here. And they're like, oh, well, I haven't seen you in a while. Well, that was because I had so much social anxiety about interacting with people and getting involved in things, because my ability to speak, my ability to pull words, my ability to just interact like I used to, people would look at me and go, wow, there she is. Or, oh, they would talk to me about something that happened like 3 months before, and they may not have known I'd been in an accident, and I would just be stumbling and bumping into walls, like trying to have that normal conversation. And it was probably the most like difficult thing to be able to want to be present and be a part of things, but you're literally walking around in shoes of your former self. So just think about wearing a pair of shoes and take the laces out and how you flop around in those shoes. That was my experience with everything I did. And it went on for years. So when I started putting in the Hearty Nutritionals and I started taking, the 3 that became the 5, that became the 7, that became the 3 weeks, all these things that I was compounding with in my real world of every day, not only functioning, but just getting quality of sleep, started to get better and better and better, where I could return to life and kind of return to reality. And things were different, but I was able to at least have a normal experience, and physically, I was starting to not only physically match the person I was before because I looked healthier because of what it was putting in my body, but it was like I now could have a conversation. I could have more of a life again. I did have a little bit of depression, and depression and anxiety go hand in hand. And what I found was once I got up to the full point of taking 12 of the Hearty Nutritionals, which did take several months, the clarity of the depression haze of feeling like, oh, why am I so tired today? Why do I feel so blah? Kind of just lifted and lifted, and then it didn't return. So it did what it said it was going to do, and it did do that, and it did deliver for me. And for that, I can't put into words what that victory has become for me, my life, and where I'm going. I no longer operate as the shell of myself with the TBI. I operate now as I have a TBI, but I'm comfortable with the shell of myself that I am today. It's not the past person, it's the person I am now, because all the different symptomatic things I've been dealing with from the traumatic brain injury have finally calmed down. So my experience of everything I do, see, interact with is not one that's struggling with attention deficit or depression or anxiety. It's one that's struggling with just being me. That's a much easier thing to wrap my head around and deal with every day with a little bit more consistency than I had previously to taking the product. Life for me now is one of less anxiety. I sleep more. My moods are less irregular. I have more energy. Most would say I probably smile more. Overall, I have more attentiveness and more engagement with everything I used to do and love, but in a different way than I did prior to taking the Nutritionals. Prior to taking the Nutritionals, I got by. I did the best I could. Tried to hide the fact I had a traumatic brain injury. Tried to hide the fact that I changed. Did everything I could to do every workaround and every improvisational skill that would make sense to try to get by. Once I started taking the DEN supplement, I kind of felt like I didn't have to work as hard at trying to be the person I needed to be. The person I needed to be just started coming back alive. The supplement allowed for a lot of these symptomatic things with ADHD, anxiety, depression, mood stuff that all came with this injury I had happened. They just started to finally quiet down. Quiet down in a way that I didn't have the side effects. I was able to return to life in a way that I'd been struggling for well over 3 to 5 years. Basically, I was still walking around as a shell of my former self, but I was becoming more confident again in my ability to be a part of life versus still being on the outside or still being in the shadows or still trying to fill these shoes. I felt like I could start to partake again because I wasn't having as much ADHD. I wasn't having as much anxiety. I was finally sleeping. More importantly, I just kind of felt a little bit more normal. So I think the biggest things I noticed were my ability to focus was so much stronger. I started sleeping more. I had less agitation. I had less anxieties going into situations that would build as a preload. I could walk into a situation and it's almost like those triggers wouldn't build up and then hit. overall, my moods and different things from the anxieties, and then just different outside interferences. When you have a traumatic brain injury, you have a lot of overlap of stimuli that comes in. You have heightened sensory to the tree blowing outside, the noise of the refrigerator, the squeak of the chair, the things that are going on in everybody's environment that most people take for granted as just being background noise that they know is there but they don't hear. When you live with a traumatic brain injury, TBI folks, we hear and see everything. And in most cases, those things become the annoyances that provoke the anxieties, as well as unfortunately the mood swings, because it kind of starts a circuit overload and you can't control it. So to have something that is starting to clean that up, and it actually be a nutritional supplement that is not a medication that I have to worry about dosage and side effects, which is a big one. Den doesn't have side effects. The only side effect is you get better, and I can positively 100% say that you get better. If I had to say if there was a downside to using Den, I don't know that there really is. Improving your mental health and well-being, I don't see where there's a downside. There's only an upside.